that as we go. There we go. And I will just kick us off and say I'm Jody Nowicki, Senior Director of Stakeholder Engagement with Rocky Mountain Partnership, and I've been emailing and connecting with most of you. I have a little bit of a frog COVID voice, and so I've invited Kaya Swanson from the Rocky Mountain Partnership team to really facilitate this conversation. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Kaya, to get us started.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jody, and good evening, everyone. See some familiar faces, but also some folks that I'm excited to meet this evening. So thank you all so much for hopping on. It's great to see you all, and we're really excited about this conversation. Just a couple of level setting things on the next slide around this conversation today. You're all probably very used to Zoom logistics at this point, but we encourage you to show your face and, of course, miss seeing everybody in person, though we get to do that a bit more now, which is exciting. We'll be managing in the chat box and synthesizing in real time. So if for any reason you need to step away for a moment, don't feel like you'll miss anything big. We'll make sure you're covered there. Just to make sure audio is good for everyone, please mute unless you're speaking. And we will be emailing out a post-session synthesis and action commitments so that after the conversation, we ensure work continues to move forward. And then one other thing we want to mention just before we get kicked off is that we really want your feedback on these sessions. So on the next slide, there is a QR code to a survey that we'll also share again with you at the end of today's conversation. We'll also drop the link in the chat. Thank you, Ashley. We just want to make sure that these are really effective and respectful uses of your time. And so we want to hear from you. We really covet your feedback on how we're doing and how we can make these sessions even better for you. And then a quick note for any public attendees who may be on the call this evening and for the entire group. It's just important to know that this is public business, and so it needs to happen in the public eye. And so as we follow the Colorado Sunshine Law, these meetings are all listed on the Rocky Mountain Partnership website. They are being recorded just so that those recordings can also be posted on the website. And this is being streamed as a webinar. So any public members who have logged on, welcome. We're excited to have you here. And since we're in a webinar format and you can't submit questions as easily, we have created a link for you that Ashley will drop in the chat. So if you have any questions or feedback as we're going through, you can either use that link or the QR code in front of you to submit any thoughts or questions you might have as we go along. So without further ado, what we will accomplish today with our time are two big things. So the first is determining the criteria and process for how the open voting seat and the two alternate city seats that are currently open on this regional opioid council will be filled now and moving forward, and determine what process cities want to follow to ensure that the voting members on the council are in fact representing the interests of all cities across this region represented by the council. And so how we'll achieve all that this evening, just a short look at the agenda and the roadmap for our session. We'll do a quick welcome and check-in, talk a little bit about how we got here, why this conversation is happening this evening. We'll share a little bit of information, probably familiar to most of you on the call, about the roles and function of the different oversight committees for this money across the state. And then we'll get to those deliverables. So talking about the process we'll follow to ensure that voting members are representing the interests of all cities across the region, determining that criteria and process, and then we'll close you out and get to the next steps. So before we push to our check-in, any questions before we get kicked off? Wonderful. Of course, feel free to unmute at any time or drop any questions you might have in the chat. Certainly want to keep this open and as conversational as possible on Zoom. So to do our quick check-in, we'd love to just hear from you, your name, your organizational, and your role. And then if there's anything not outlined in the agenda that's top of mind for you today and you want to make sure we get to during our conversation. So let's do popcorn format to make sure we get to everybody. So after you introduce yourself, pick somebody else you see on the screen. So I'll kick us off. I'm Kaya Swanson. I am the Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy for Rocky Mountain Partnership's Backbone team. And I was part of developing the agenda, so I don't have anything to contribute for number 3. And I will go ahead and hand it off to Peter Padilla.
Thank you, Kaya. So I'm Peter Padilla. I am on the City Council in Brighton, and was one of the first to join this regional council. So I'm excited to be part of this organization and helping to develop and make sure that we have adequate municipal representation on the committee as a whole. I don't have anything to add to the agenda, but I will jump to Chief May.
Hi, Jim May, Chief of Police for the City of North Glen. Actually, from years ago, trying to put together some things when the opioid epidemic really hit us, and trying to put all the stats together and seeing where it is today. It's pretty exciting. So it's a great part to be a part of it. Next week, I meet with the chiefs to talk with them too. So tonight, I'm just trying to gather as much information as possible. So thanks again for the invite, and I'll pass it over to Heather Geyer.
Thank you, Chief. Heather Geyer, City Manager, City of North Glen. I'm here tonight to learn more and stay engaged with this group. And thank you for pulling this convening together. I feel like it's a really important step just to make sure all of our cities and towns know what's going on, because this work is going to be transformational for our region as well as the state. So thank you.
And Heather, I'm going to pick somebody on your behalf. Let's go to Michael Martinez.
I knew it was going to be me. Michael Martinez, City of Brighton City Manager. Thank you for having me this evening. And like Heather mentioned, I think that just in terms of what this brings to our cities is going to be very impactful and powerful. So I look forward to deploying whatever we can in terms of helping the efforts that this group puts forth. So thank you for having me. And I'll pass it to Ben.
I will take this opportunity to pass it back to our Chief Executive Officer, Lysandra Gonzalez, to do introductions on behalf of our team.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to be here and see each and every one of you for this important conversation. As Ben mentioned, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Rocky Mountain Partnership. The team that is here in front of you from the Rocky Mountain Partnership team is here to support. We serve as the conveners, the facilitators, data support, strategy support, and also project management support in the big work of helping to ensure that we're addressing the opioid epidemic. So we're here at your service and excited to kick it over to, not everyone has gone yet, right? Mr. Greg Mills, have you gone?
I have not. Greg Mills, Mayor of Brighton. We're here to, looks like Brighton is very well represented in this call, by the way, I just noticed. And, I'm very happy we have a council member Padilla here representing not only Brighton, but the whole region here. And I think he's going to be a very great advocate for not only just Adams County, but both, urban and rural areas. Peter serves on the board for Almost Home as well, and he does a great job there. Top of mind for me is really just seeing what we can do to best represent and do what's best for our communities. I don't know what communities are more affected by the opioid crisis than others. I think all of us are affected to some extent. Maybe others are affected even more. And that's how I would weigh out who gets selected as another voting member, is what city is affected more regarding the opioid crisis here. So with that, if we're just passing along to the next introduction, I'm going to go to another fellow mayor. We'll go to Mayor McNally here from Westminster.
Hi, Nancy McNally, City of Westminster Mayor. This is my first meeting, so excited to meet all of you. And this is always big and just want to work together in this northern area to help each other and help those that need help. Chief Hobbert.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to be here. Norm Hobbert, I'm the interim chief of police for Westminster, and this is my first meeting, and I'm here to learn. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And I will pick somebody on your behalf, Chief.
Right.
Let's go to, no, don't apologize. Let's go to Kendall.
Hello, I'm Kendall Koch. I'm from the City of Aurora. I'm the manager of the Office of Special Projects. And that just means I get to be a part of special projects such as these. And I have been on the Arapahoe County Regional Council build, as well as trying to help with this as well, and getting our staff and our council involved in this process for Adams County and Douglas County too, as we have the 3 counties that surround Aurora. And I will kick it off to Councilmember Coombs.
All right, thank you, Kendall. I'm Allison Coombs. I'm an Aurora City Council member representing Ward 5. And I am also here to learn and figure out how best we can make sure that cities are represented. And I do have to leave a little bit early because I have a Dr. Cog Finance and Budget Committee meeting that starts at 5:45. But I will go ahead and pass it off to Matthew Court.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Court. I am an assistant city attorney with the city of Thornton, and I'm here to learn and to be an interested observer on behalf of our city manager's office, our fire chief and police chief, and our city attorney's office as well, to just kind of gather information and make sure that Thornton is a part of the conversation and that we can talk about things internally within the city departments as well. So hello to everybody, and thanks for having us.
Thanks so much, Matt. And last but not least, City Manager Tinklenberg has stepped onto the call. Welcome. We are so excited you're here. We're just doing a quick check-in. So if you don't mind sharing your name, your organization and role, and whether, well, you haven't seen the agenda. So if there's anything you want to make sure that we hit on this call, that's really top of mind for you.
Okay. Roger Tinklenberg, City Manager for Commerce City. And, definitely want to be part of coordination on all of this. At this point, it's looking like we would apply our money towards our homelessness initiative, but definitely want to talk about that further and make sure we stay aligned.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for taking a moment to introduce yourself. And again, we're so excited you're all here and to have this conversation with you. So just to level set around how we got here, why this conversation is happening this evening, sort of going over some information I'm sure is probably familiar to a lot of you. But again, just to level set, as you know, Attorney General Phil Weiser and local government leaders have established a first of its kind joint framework to distribute the over $400 million coming to the state of Colorado from those litigation settlements reached with companies who fueled the opioid crisis. And that framework for distribution of those funds statewide has 3 principal lines for use of those funds. First, ensuring that there are sufficient evidence-based strategies to expand treatment and recovery services, supporting robust prevention and education efforts, and providing effective oversight of those who prescribe, dispense, distribute, and administer opioids. And some additional good information to know is that the potential use of these funds fall more broadly into these 6 categories: prevention and education, treatment, recovery, criminal justice, harm reduction, and opioid abatement in our region. So how the funds are actually allocated statewide, just so you see where this regional council fits in with the larger picture of what's happening in the state. Out of the money that's coming to the state, 20% is direct allocation by formula to participating local governments. 60% comes to regional councils like this one. It's a regional opioid abatement fund, again, using that formula to different regions. 10% goes to an infrastructure fund that's statewide with full transparency to help especially hit rural areas. And then another 10% direct allocation to state governments.
If I can add just one thing, Kaya, when they say participating local governments, that really alludes to local governments that have signed that state MOU agreeing to the joint framework, which most cities in the entire state, all cities within Adams County have signed. So that includes everyone.
Thank you. Definitely a good add. And then just to get a broader picture of where this money is going for the regional councils across the state, as you can see, Adams County is number 8 there on the map. We are our own region. And so this is, again, where the majority of those funds are being distributed, that 60% share of the entire amount coming to the state. And anything else that I didn't hit here, Jody, that you want to make sure I hit on?
Just that when we talk about all the dollars that are coming in, one thing that the AG's office has shared is that we're looking at a about 18-year period, at least, for this set of funds. And so we'll talk a little bit more about how this infrastructure that is being set up to support Adams County could also look at additional sources of revenue to abate the opioid crisis, but that this is really a long game infrastructure that's being set up.
Thank you. So governance and what that looks like across the state, there are 3 main categories in which governance falls. First, there is that State Abatement Council that oversees all of the 19 regions, of which, again, Adams County is one. And then each region is setting up their own council, some with multiple counties involved. Again, Adams County is slightly unique in the fact that this county is a region of its own. And then there is also an advisory committee that oversees that 10% we mentioned just a bit earlier. That 10% is earmarked for the infrastructure funds and really specifically focused on rural areas. So as far as what has happened so far in Adams County, just to give you a picture of the progress since this framework was released, in December and through January, Adams County put out an RFP for facilitators, and a Rocky Mountain Partnership submitted the proposal, which is what brought us here today. Adams County and Rocky Mountain Partnership signed the official contract in February. And then a dashboard that we'll put in front of you here in just a moment was launched in March of 2022 that really gives a good overview of the existing crisis, both in the region and across the state. In April, we worked with Adams County and the Attorney General's office to identify the regional council members and continued improvements to that dashboard that was launched in March. And now what's happening is the very first meeting of this regional council took place in June, on June 29th, to confirm the structure and governance. So today, you all are convening to determine the process and criteria for selecting voting members and alternates, and to ensure, again, that this group is representative of the interests of all cities across the region represented by this regional council. And then another important—
Kaya, may I add something there?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Excuse me. I just wanted to add that one of the things we did that is probably actually on the upcoming slide, but I wanted to mention it anyway, is that in that first meeting, the group determined that we needed a little bit more participation from both the county commissioner representation and from the municipal representation. We didn't want to have one seat be responsible for speaking for all needs of all municipalities. We felt that we needed to have an additional person join in that conversation. And then in order to make sure that we always have full representation, we wanted to make sure that we also had alternates ready to be seated and make sure that there's no meeting at which we didn't have a vote in place. So I probably really just gave away the next slide, but I wanted to make sure that you realize that that came out of that first conversation, that we realized we needed a little bit broader voice from municipal representation. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful and certainly a good thing to highlight, and appreciate that, that additional information here. I think that's great context. So now that we've spoken to the governance, want to again just sort of level set around the roles and function of the regional council. So as you can see in front of you, there are a few different roles related to this regional council. So the first is those voting members. Those are the members who prioritize work to address the opioid crisis in alignment with that framework we walked through earlier. Making decisions on distribution of those funds, and they must be an employee or elected official of a participating local government. Alternates, of course, serve in the absence of the temporary absence of a voting member, and again, must be an employee or elected official of a participating local government. And then there's the advisory committee. So this is a group who can apply to and receive funds to address the opioid crisis and provide content expertise as those folks doing work on the ground and those with lived experience to voting members to inform the decisions made about that 2-year plan. So really this can include, but is not limited to, community members, healthcare providers, recovery and treatment providers, county, city reps, attorneys general's office, on down the line.
And I think we're gonna, as Peter alluded to, pull up the structure that this group has come up with. But something to note around the advisory committee is that this is really where anybody who's a stakeholder that isn't currently serving as a voting member could still really be engaged and is encouraged to be engaged. So every city, regardless of whether or not is a voting member at any given time, could and should absolutely be involved in the work of the council.
Thanks, Jody. And so the role that we play as the Rocky Mountain Partnership team, again, we've been contracted by Adams County to facilitate and serve as the backbone to this regional council. So we facilitate the meetings of the regional council, development and maintenance of the data dashboard, which you'll see a screenshot here in just a moment, inventorying and mapping who's doing what, so that we have a great idea of what's happening, what's working, and where gaps exist, ensuring alignment with the statewide joint framework, ensuring the funding is awarded to places that will really have the most impact, and identifying other funding opportunities in addition to the litigation settlements. So part of our role, as I just mentioned, is to sort of be stewards of this regional impact dashboard. We won't go into this in great detail today, but just want to make sure that you're aware it exists. And we've been working with content experts across the region, state and county, to develop this dashboard specific to this effort. It's been getting the attention of other regions who are standing up their own regional councils, and really is considered a game-changing data infrastructure by regional and state leaders. So much so that those leaders have actually begun conversations with us about how we can implement this data infrastructure across other regions in the state. So really exciting work here. Can't say enough good things about our data team who is overseeing this, and let us know if you have any questions about that.
Are there any questions so far just on the background information, or does everybody feel pretty caught up in how this effort has unfolded and where we are within this region?
I think it's great.
All right, keep going.
Cool, we'll take it. So without further ado, here is really the composition for the voting members on this regional council. As you can see, there are a number of different sort of sectors represented here, and each voting and alternate seat is for a 2-year term unless that stakeholder group determines otherwise. So as you can see, we have city, public health, municipal county court, law enforcement, human services, and county representatives. And so another thing to point out here is that we do have representatives chosen in some of the categories, but not in others. And so again, that'll be a critical component of our conversation tonight, is determining the process and criteria for filling those open seats both now and moving forward. Any questions on any of that before I move on? Fantastic. Okay. And based on some of the feedback that we've received so far, what you see in front of you are the potential advisory committee members. So again, not voting members, but those folks with lived experience or sector experience who can provide advice and insight into the 2-year plan and apply for funds. And so these entities have been identified and are in the process of being confirmed by the Rocky Mountain Partnership team. If there is anything or anyone missing from this list, please let us know and we will connect with them. We certainly want to make sure that this list is as comprehensive as it can be, and certainly in line with the feedback that you all feel will be needed in order to really make good decisions about the money coming to the region. Right off the bat, does anyone have any thoughts around this list, or who else might not be captured here? Seeing some in the chat. Thank you, Allison.
That's perfect. Well, anything, if you want to just drop them in the chat as we go, or as you think of them, put them in there. And if I have any questions about what that means, I'll follow up with you.
Thanks, Jody. Great. Okay. So again, today's conversation is focused on city representation to this regional council. So as of now, Councilmember Padilla from Brighton has been confirmed as one of the voting members. But there is one open seat for a city representative and 2 alternates that still need to be filled. So the next piece of our conversation this evening is to talk about the criteria for those voting seats and the process for selecting those representatives moving forward. So before we really dig into that, we want to talk about how all these roles are going to work together and ensure that the voting members are, of course, representing the interests of all cities around the region. So as far as a communications loop or a method of ensuring that feedback is being gained and really representative of the entire region, we've gotten some feedback so far, but want to hear from you this evening about what else needs to be considered in addition to what's on this list already. So what we've heard is needed is to come up with a values list for municipal representation. Provide the opportunity for municipal input ahead of every regional council meeting so that folks are walking in with a good idea of what's needed across the region even before the conversation happens. And note that regional council meetings are open and non-voting members in the advisory council are invited and encouraged to participate, plus of course the public, and ensuring that that feedback loop is included right in real time during the sessions. So I want to open it up to the group and just hear from you how that list on the left is landing with you and what else you think might need to be added. And feel free to come up or come off mute, share your thoughts.
Yep. Kaya, if I might just add a little bit more color to those as we have some prep time. When I mentioned coming up with a values list, I was thinking of more what may be the municipal interests as we proceed, and how do we take those into consideration? So if we need to make decisions in the overall council with some speed or some haste, is there a set of principles that we would use to make that decision if we didn't have a chance to discuss it specifically with each of the municipal representatives? So that was my thought process there. And the opportunity to speak ahead of time, again, as an open meeting, we will see the agenda in advance. We should have some idea what decisions need to be made in advance of the meeting taking place. But I think that the people who do sit in the seats need to make sure that we are looking to understand what the input is for those things that are specifically needing action at that meeting, and make sure that we understand not a pre-vote by any stretch of the imagination, but some idea of what will be our desire coming out of that meeting and coming out of that agenda. So obviously there are more than 4 cities in Adams County, making sure that we have some idea how we'll want to take action as we go in. And that may mean an advanced communication and an invitation for input electronically, or that might mean a pre-meeting where something big is coming in.
Thank you. That's really helpful context. How is this landing with other folks on the call so far as a list of recommendations? And is there anything else that you would add? Seeing some shaking of heads. Okay, well, if there's no feedback, and I'm not seeing any in the chat, but please unmute and correct me if that's not accurate. Our next step is to achieve consensus on this piece of it. So just want to hear from you, each of you, how this proposed list of criteria for a communications loop and process is landing with you. Either give us a thumbs up, good to go. Thumbs sideways, you think you're in favor, but you've got some questions, or thumbs down, you've got some concerns and you're not in favor of the list. We don't have a thumbs sideways emoji yet, but if you want to use either thumbs up or down, you can show us on your screen, you can put it in the chat, whatever works best for you. I see 1 thumbs up so far. That's exciting. Got 2, 3. I feel like I'm on The Price is Right or something. 4, lovely. 5.
Well, we're on a webinar, so they're all floating up from the bottom, which I've never seen before, so that's fun.
I love it. This is new for me, so that was really exciting. I'm not seeing any thumbs sideways or down. So I am going to go ahead and propose that this is a list that has achieved consensus. And again, sort of speak now or forever hold your peace if anybody has any additional feedback on it.
Do you all see this? The reactions, like the emojis that used to come up on your picture now come out on the side. So I was trying to give you all a celebration and see how it like comes across the screen.
But I don't even know that comes from you.
Oh, because it's got to be confidential, I guess.
2 years in and we're still learning things. I love it. All right, well, let's keep moving then. That's very exciting. Thank you again for the context, Peter, and for your feedback, group. So the next step is to determine the criteria and process, again, for filling those open alternate seats and the one open voting seat. So same process here. What we've heard so far, and again, anybody, Peter included, please hop in for additional context if I miss anything. What we've heard so far is it's important for us to make sure that both suburban and rural communities are included. The city decision to opt in or out of local allocations could just be a consideration, not necessarily a requirement. And then stagger it so that there's always a voting member with experience so that not everybody comes off at the same time. So the very first term for the second voting member would be a 1-year term, just so that, again, that is staggered moving forward.
So I do have a couple of things that I would just add in this one. The first one is that while it may be an interest whether communities are contributing their municipal allocation back, that isn't a requirement to be on the regional council because, of course, that 60% that is going to the region is part of your funding. However, I did hear a little bit of concern at the first meeting and coming out of the first meeting that people wanted to make sure that if the decisions on the amount going to the region were going to take effect, that they were looking for some investment from each of the other communities. I have confirmed with each of those folks that there is indeed an investment because that 60% of the funding that went to the region did come from those communities. So it's not an eliminating feature. I don't even know that all municipalities have made a decision in that regard, or if they've just sort of had some inclination, leaned one direction or another. The other, referring to staggering the terms, that actually is not a requirement set in front of us, but as we learned that this is 16 years, 18 years, I can't remember which was the figure, I think 18 years. We definitely want to make sure that we have a sustaining and consistent municipal voice, and that we don't suddenly remove everybody who has any experience and start over with a fresh group of people who don't necessarily know anything. So that was where I came up with the recommendation for the first-year term. And again, I always go a slide in advance of whatever somebody is talking about because I'm terrible and can't help it. But the other concept, in my opinion, is that the alternates who are seated first should then be up for the first consideration for moving into voting seats at the end of that term. It may be that somebody says, no, my 2-year time is really all I could invest in this, and they don't want to continue or move from an alternate seat to a voting seat. But I think that should be the first place that we would look, again, so that we keep as much experience as possible and then build the fresh experience into our alternates so that they have an opportunity to catch up, learn what's going on before we go forward. So before I keep talking, I see that Ms. Coca's hand got raised. So I'll stop.
Peter, when you said that cities haven't made the decision for the opt-in or opt-out, have we received the opt-in or opt-out email? I don't recall receiving it yet, and so that would be something that we'd like to see so that we can opt in, number one. But also, I agree with your alternates, with your other consideration as well. I apologize. I have Novocaine still in my face from some dental work, but I definitely agree.
I believe that some emails have started to go out, but I don't think much of anybody's had a chance to do a formal response, because most cities will also have to take some sort of resolution action. So even if the emails have gone out, there probably isn't anything directly there.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen it at all. I haven't seen it at all. So I was just looking for that for, in fact, for the other 2 regions I was on as well. So I was just making sure.
And that is coming from.
And it's also true that people can opt in and opt out as many times as they want to during the time period of the 18 years. So somebody may decide that they have a plan in the immediate and then discover that the funds don't go as far as they thought they were going to and opt in, or they may decide that the direction of the overall is not going the way they think, or there's some individual plan that is valuable to the city to then re-opt out. And then I think I'm speaking over City Manager Geyer.
And that comes from the AG's office, right? The opt-in, opt-out should come from the AG's office.
And I know that Heidi Williams shared that it has gone out. So Kendall, I'm going to take an action commitment right now and reach out and just let them know to resend it and make sure that that gets to you.
Okay, and I'll just double check too. But yeah, I don't recall seeing it. Thank you.
And Heather, I see you have your hand up as well.
Thank you. I was going to add that more than likely that email from the AG's office went to the CAO, CEO of your organization, unless that individual delegated you to be the point of contact, because it all has to do with the distribution of funds. So I brought up this concern at the first meeting, and I'm definitely not for having any type of stipulation about opting in or opting out. I view that as a very mechanical aspect of just the overall state structure relative to the regional councils. And so for North Glen, we opted in to receive the funds directly. That doesn't mean we don't want to be part of the regional council. We do. It's just really the state's going to send us money, and in hope we will in turn, send money to the regional council through some type of established IGA or some other mechanism. I've talked with our city attorney. It's pretty easy to get that type of system set up, but that email went out pre-CML conference, and I want to say the deadline is coming up the first part of August. So check with your city managers. Thanks.
I think it's July 31st technically, but if it hasn't been received, Kendall, I'll, like I said, get that information. Has anybody not received that email or questions about communications with the AG's office? Okay.
But Jody, I am hearing some pretty consistent feedback, unless somebody speaks up to the opposite, that I really think that second bullet point should just be removed from our criteria, even as a conversation item. Let's just remove that. I don't think cities have had an opportunity to make that decision, and we're at the very beginning of 18 years. We're going to make that decision 100,000 times between now and whatever 18 years from now is, 2040.
Thanks, Peter. So Ashley, I think we can just remove that second bullet point in the notes entirely.
Although if you want to put a strike through,
yeah,
you can put a strike through text if you want to retain
just we have
the fact that it was a consideration at some points, but I think that is not there. And then the suburban versus rural concept, I would simply mention that we don't have people from the rural communities who responded to the invitation for today's meeting. So I think it becomes incumbent upon us to engage with them and speak to them, but I think that they're perhaps not organized or structured or ready to take a seat on the council. It's just up to us to make sure that we are taking care of the full of the county.
Thanks, Peter. Any clarifying questions that haven't been addressed yet, or anything else folks would like to see added to that list of considerations? Okay.
And I apologize if I missed this, but part of this, Peter, did you already speak to that one voting or the second voting seat being 1 year term just for this year in order to? Is everybody in consensus?
We did in order to stagger the terms going forward. We did.
Okay, great.
I would add, though, Jody, thanks for the reminder, that those terms are not specifically term limited. And so people can continue to serve at the desire of the group that sends them there. So we could determine not to change people out. We could determine to rotate people in and out. We could rotate through the alternates. We have a lot of ways that we can approach this a year and 2 years from now. So there are not very tight restrictions on that ability to move forward.
All right. Any other thoughts or feedback before we move to achieve consensus? Okay, seeing none. So actually, if you can go back up to that slide just to make sure everybody's clear. So the consideration on that second bullet has been removed, and suburban versus rural communities remains, staggering it remains, and considering alternates first to move into a voting seat remains. Seeing some floating thumbs again. I don't see any thumbs sideways or down. Did I miss anyone?
Michael, I like how it's like floating on
Yeah.
your screen. Thank you.
Thank you for really participating. I love it. Fantastic. Okay, well, then we will move forward with that list as proposed and amended. So now we'll move into discussing the actual process for filling the open seats. Just as a reminder, again, this is a focus on the city representation to this regional council. And we have one voting member selected already, Councilman Peter Padilla, and now need to determine the process for filling that second voting member seat and the two alternate seats that are open. So same format here. What we have heard so far should be a consideration. We've got a couple of options here and certainly want to talk through them with you and see what this group prefers. So for the current open seats, we have the option to achieve consensus today on who will fill that from those who have already expressed interest. Option 2 is to do a drawing from those who have expressed interest, or option 3, determine a more formal voting structure. And then moving forward, offer voting seats again to that alternate who is transitioning off. So let's start with that first piece around filling the open seats currently. Out of these three options, how's the group feeling? What might be the best fit for the conversation tonight? Or are there any other options you'd like to propose?
Who has expressed interest?
That would be a good thing to know. Do we have a list of that, Jody?
I mean, we don't have a formal, I mean, I know I've heard anecdotally from some of folks on this call, that was actually the next question, and maybe we can have that conversation first. I see that Heather has her hand raised, so I'll ping it over to her first.
Thanks, Jody. I was gonna suggest that a formal solicitation be done calling for volunteers. I really viewed this convening as a way to get additional input from city stakeholders. And then a next step would naturally be that we would do a call out for individuals to serve on it. I think it should be a formal process, definitely not drawing names. I think we want to know why behind the individual's interests, skills, experience, background. Does the individual, it's also an opportunity for the individual to ask the regional council members questions, get to know more about what that group's vision is and is it a fit. So I view it as a very formal call for volunteers. You submit simplified application, and then the council decides to do interviews and then make a selection.
When you say the council doing a selection, Heather, I think the spirit of those buckets are really for cities to be the ones deciding who represents cities. So I'd be curious for what that voting structure would look like, who would be on that table, because I'll tell you, I know that like the county is not going to want to be involved at all in determining a city rep, right?
Okay. Yeah. So I had a broader vision on it, and maybe at some point, I mean, that once the council gets set up, it can evolve to that level. But in terms of what you're saying, then perhaps it is a smaller group of individuals that make the selection. I don't know that I have thoughts. Maybe Councilmember Padilla does. I want to make sure that it's an open and transparent process from the get-go.
Kendall?
Right. So the thing that I'll mention, although I know Ms. Puka has her hand up as well, is that the charge coming out of that last meeting was for each of the groups to name their second seat. So the county commissioners went to the council of 5, and Eva Henry volunteered and was assigned to that second seat. And same is happening with each of the groups naming their own alternative. So it is definitely our responsibility to name the second formal seat holder and our alternates. So we can have this group with a vote per city make that decision based on, as you said, an application process. Or we can choose, I like that more than I like a random structure, unless there were only 3 people who were interested in doing so, and then maybe a random structure for which of the 3 open seats those went into might be appropriate if there were only 3 people interested. But because we only have 4 cities represented here today, or 5 cities today, maybe we should do a pretty short-term call for applications and interest and do a follow-up with an application. And then I'll again be quiet so Kendall can speak.
Had to find my unmute button. I agree that there could be a call for application. I often wonder what the experience or background might be, but I guess it would be up to the team to determine what that looks like, because it could be just heart, right? So I guess that's the thought that I'm coming from. I was kind of assigned to this, but however, I know that we have council members that are very interested in being a part of this. I just don't know background wise what that looks like. And you're right, we don't have everyone that has been at previous meetings to this one. So it would be nice to see what other cities are thinking as well.
Thank you. And City Manager Tinklenberg?
Does ADCOG play a role in this? In other words, what if ADCOG voted?
That's a really good question. Peter, do you know or have any thoughts on that?
I'm trying to make sure that I heard the full question. So Adams County government does have representation on the commission and has 2 voting seats. Those are being filled by Steve Odoricio and Eva Henry. They did not want to express a preference or a vote for which municipal representatives might sit, because that could again potentially give them a heavier voice than might be appropriate. So I guess I'm trying to make sure what was the question.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply Adams County. ADCOG, the group of representatives of each city that get together, how often, I don't recall if it's quarterly or how often they get together, but it's basically Adams County Council of Governments that get together periodically.
Are all the local governments within Adams County represented on ADCOG?
Heather, you know better than I believe so.
Go ahead, Heather.
I believe so. The challenge with the AdCog meetings, a couple pieces to understand. We're just getting them going and resuming them again. They're typically quarterly evening sessions. So the next one, Commerce City is hosting, right, Roger? And that's
Yes.
at the end of the month. Well, it's next week, as a matter of fact, on Wednesday. So I think we have to be careful. My caution with using AdCog is I think it's a great forum for information sharing and feedback of our elected officials and key staff members. I think it's definitely a group that can be utilized moving forward. If you have an interest in participating in this group and can't come to that meeting next week or the meeting that'll be later on in the fall, then you're going to miss that opportunity, which is why I think that infrastructure for this group needs to be built to stand alone, have a relational energy synergy, if you will, with AdCog. But I think that it would make it challenging because this structure is really being created through these convenings to put it in front of that group. So those are my initial thoughts, Roger, but I think there's definitely opportunity moving forward to get information in front of the AdCog groups. They also like to try to keep those evening meetings, to a couple hours. So, that's something that is typically driven by the Board of County Commissioners. So if it's something you want to look at, you could, revisit that with with Alicia and her staff. But I think at this point, I don't know what you have planned for next week, Roger, in terms of a topic.
I don't know either.
I suspect that the time is either too short or too long for that to be a useful input for this one, because preparing and asking people by next week with an agenda that's probably already been shared or at least planned is very short notice, and a quarter out is really too long a notice for the next time we're going to have a responsibility to meet. So I guess what I would propose as what I'm hearing so far is to ask the RMP folks to put together a quick solicitation with a handful of basic questions that would provide some input, and send that to city manager, city council, some representatives from each of those groups with a relatively tight deadline, say not more than about 10 days to get a turnaround, and then do a follow-up where we can look at those applications and determine how much competition we have or how many people are interested in those seats. So I think that I like what City Manager Geyer is suggesting in making it meaningful, but I think we need to make it relatively quick, and we need to make the decision makers those people who are willing to attend to discuss.
So one consideration for the group, just timeline wise, and the answer is yes, of course, we are happy to do that. I think I have a question and a consideration, and the consideration is that the second meeting of the regional council, which I know there's going to be some catchier name come up with for them, is slated to be on August 12th, and that is going to be an in-person session. RSVPs haven't gone out yet, but we were excited to share this with you today. It'll be 11:30 to 4 at the Human Services building and in person. And the purpose of that session will be for the regional council, both voting members, advisory committee members, anybody who's interested to be part of going through understanding what currently exists, where are there gaps, what does the data say, what do folks with lived experience say, in order to really develop the components of the 2-year plan. So it's not determining who's getting funding, but just kind of the bumpers for the next 2 years around what the priorities for these funds are going to be. If we can have a city voting member determined before then, that would be ideal if we think that that timeline is realistic, so that we can go into that meeting. Also going to be pushing the other groups that haven't determined their voting members to do so at the same timeline. The question I had,
which would suggest that we would need that response from people. Sorry, the dog hates it when the other phone rings. We would need that response from people effectively by the end of the month or the first few days of August in order to have a chance to meet a second time or put out a ballot of sorts. So we would need to move pretty quickly in order to accomplish and meet that date.
Yep, and that was my question: is how would you all propose the voting structure look? Is it a vote per city? Is it multiple votes per city? Is it who comes to the group? What do you think would be ideal for that?
I wouldn't want to stack it with multiple per city and have people say, oh, I'll make sure that I've got the city manager and the mayor and the city attorney and some other staff there. I think that we have to go with a vote for each city that's represented.
Can we do consensus?
Which is how the airport coordinating committee works, is a vote based on each city.
Thank you, Ashley, for capturing all of this. So what we're hearing, the proposal right now is for RMP to put together a formal solicitation for if you're interested in being a voting member. And I would even propose that you can say, are you interested in being a voting member, an alternate, or either? Select what you're open to, put together some basic questions to get that interest. Schedule, maybe we can even do that before we get off today, on when this group would like to come back together to review those who are interested, with each city having one vote and having access to that information ahead of time to make the decision before the August 12th regional council meeting. Would anybody have any proposals to modify that proposal? Seeing some shaking of heads. Okay. Hi, I'm going to kick it back to you because I can hear it myself.
Please keep drinking tea. So it looks like we've gotten some really good feedback on that proposal put together. Let's take a quick informal thumbs up, sideways down vote just to see how that's landing with folks. And please certainly feel free to lift any modifications you might have in the chat or unmute, whatever's easiest for you. Seeing a lot of thumbs.
So quick question. We're voting on number 6, is that correct?
That is correct. So if you can go back up to 30, whoever is sharing your screen, thank you. Putting together a solicitation to municipalities with basic questions, including, do you want to be a voting member, alternate, or either, with a very quick deadline following up with municipalities about the interest and creation of a ballot for making that decision with one vote per city.
And the only other thing that I would add is I would ask the cities where more than one person might be interested to do a little bit of pre-screening and narrowing that down. Having 9 applications from Aurora might be a challenge. So we'll leave Kendall to wrestle the city council members to the ground and narrow that down.
I think we've already determined who that person would be. So we would submit one person.
We can add that.
Sorry to pick on you. It just happens that your picture is remaining front and center for me. So.
That's good though. The wrestling's already done. So glad to hear it.
Do you all want to have another virtual meeting to officially vote, or would you? I think that's probably best just because of open meeting laws, rather than doing electronic vote. I just want to confirm that as part of this. So
I think that's my preference, but I think that people might be able to send a delegate to vote, or send I guess I would be open to the question of whether you would accept a proxy if a city can't attend
I saw
through RMP.
Sorry, I saw a thumbs up from Roger on that as well. And Heather?
Yeah.
Kendall? Okay.
So what we'll be able to do then is make sure everyone has that information going into that meeting, and we'll know kind of where each city is thinking of voting. Okay. Great.
Okay, so with that, I know we had some conversations after our thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways. Would anyone like to change their thumbs up vote? Or I'm just gonna take a look around at all the faces. Any additional thoughts? Not seeing any at this point, but of course, reach out to the team after the meeting if anything else comes up or you have any additional thoughts.
I actually have a question. Chief May, you mentioned that local law enforcement leaders are coming together. Is that specifically around that open seat? Do you know, have you been reached out to about that yet?
No, actually, I've been contacted with Levon. So he's putting together an email and he's going to send it out to all the chiefs.
Okay.
We have our chiefs meeting next Thursday morning. So it's a two-part meeting. We have our drug task force meeting after that. And then we have a kind of like a chiefs around, just kind of a quick little hour board meeting. We can bring it up then, see who's interested. And then, it's kind of dynamic. So I just heard today that one of our chiefs in Adams County is retiring here in a month. So again, just talk about it. I think Levon has the most knowledge of it. So he'll be able to, send that to the chiefs to get a better understanding and see who would be interested. So,
perfect.
Unless Norm has anything else. Norm, is that good by you?
I am absolutely good with that. And I think that's a good forum to bring it up at the Chiefs meeting.
Good deal.
Good.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for that question, Jody. And any other thoughts before we move on? Okay, so next steps. Just want to sort of give you an overview of what happens now. So of course, the processes that we all just landed on will of course be built into this timeline as well. But aside from that, what's coming up includes the next regional council meeting, which again, as Jody mentioned, will be on the 12th from 11:30 to 4 in person at the Adams County Human Services Building. And that work really will be to identify specific areas of work to be funded and determine if there are any quick wins to address with funds that have already been received. Then the very first annual Colorado Opioid Settlement Conference will be on the 15th and 16th with both a virtual and in-person option. And then throughout August and September, we'll see that 2-year plan submitted to the AG's office, regional council accepting LOIs for that first round of funding. And our team will be working with entities who have submitted those LOIs to scope them, highlight opportunities for collaboration, and strategize joint applications to avoid siloed work wherever we can. So, Peter, I told you I was going to shoot for an hour. I almost made it. We'd like to...
Very close.
Really close. So before we turn you all loose this evening for whatever else you might have going on, we would love to hear from you by either unmuting or in the chat box, one word to describe how you're feeling about where we landed today. Just kind of want to do a temperature check after our conversation. And of course, if you have any questions in addition to this or anything else you want to make sure is addressed before we head out, please feel free to unmute or throw that in the chat too. Seeing hopeful, we'll take it. That's a great word. Comfortable, lovely. Comfortable, good. I'm feeling excited now that I know Zoom is able to throw floating emojis throughout the ether. So that's exciting. It's been a really...
That strikes me as danger for you all to know that that can happen.
Comfortable. We've got progress. Absolutely. Oh, and City Manager Tinklenberg, I see your hand is up.
Yes, quick question. Do you know the nature or the scope or mission for the Colorado conference that's coming up?
I actually do not. Team, do we have any information?
Out the information I have. I know it's hosted by the AG's office, and I think they're just hoping it to be a space for collaboration, but give me 1 second. I'll pull up the email I have and share that information.
Thank you.
Reason for my question, all I saw was register here, but didn't offer any content.
Yeah, I think I recall asking Heidi the same question, and she thought that there was going to be some learning opportunities, some guest speakers from subject matter experts, and some different types of learning opportunities, whether they're breakout sessions or something, I'm not sure, but that's what I recall from my last conversation with her.
But you're correct. There's nothing else in the invite.
The other thing that we're going to be working to do is ensure that you have clear communications ongoing about the work. And so we will make sure that we'll find out more information and we'll make sure we get that out to you and make it really easy for you to register.
Absolutely. Thank you, Liz. And I also just want to mention too, before we let you go, Ashley put that link to the survey in the chat. And again, we just really want to make sure these sessions are what you want and need them to be. And so please feel free to open that up. It's only like 4 or 5 questions, so it should just take you a few seconds, and we'd love your feedback on tonight's session.
Since we're wrapping up early, would everyone prefer that we put out a doodle poll for the next meeting, or would you like to just calendar when we're going to come together early August right now?
Let's do a doodle poll. I'm sorry, I really do have a meeting that I need to go to.
Absolutely, happy to do it.
Let's use the tools.
We'll put that out in our post-session packet and get that scheduled hopefully in the next few days.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
All right, well, fantastic checkout words in the chat. Thank you all so much. Thank you for your time and your feedback and just the incredible conversation we've been able to have tonight. Jody, any closing thoughts or anything else you want to make sure we hit on?
No, thank you, everybody. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Roger, do you have any additional questions we can help answer? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just doing the doodle poll. So I'll
Thank
leave
you.
this, go back over there.
Thank
Take
you.
your time. Yes, thank you so much.
Yep, bye.
Bye.